Good evening and welcome to ELOSOFUMARTAKES. This is our 84th take live from Euless, Texas and live on Facebook. I am so pleased, so privileged, and so excited to welcome in our guest tonight. It's going to be a fantastic take. We're going to be going all over the place. But before I get to him, we have to thank the people that make this show possible. And that, of course, is our sponsors. And tonight's show, of course, is sponsored by Drew Estate. Drew Estate announced earlier this week that the limited edition Acid Cuba Arte is now shipping to retailers nationwide. Featured art from 5 of Brooklyn's iconic living artists in the graffiti culture. This milestone product was introduced at this year's IPCPR trade show held in Las Vegas just last month. The Acid Cuba Arte is a limited edition torpedo wrapped in a lush broadleaf Maduro wrapper, bright Indonesian binder, and plenty of beautiful blend of hardy aged Nicaraguan fillers. Each water tower humidor features one of 7 unique designs and includes 20 beautifully packaged Acid Cuba Arte cigars with a Boveda to maintain humidity. President and co-founder of Drew Estate, Jonathan Drew, said that these broadleaf torpedoes are the most beautiful figurados he has ever seen. Truly exquisite. The level of craftsmanship of the Cuba Arte cigar is equally matched in the packaging, as the Brooklyn graffiti artists deeply connected with the vision, culture, and scope of the Acid brand. Drew Estate has created a Brooklyn Nicaraguan masterpiece that screams from the downtown Brooklyn rooftops. This is our New York accent. We are very proud of our bancheros, roleros at the factory, as well as our entire supply chain for delivering excellence. Once again, we want to see the Cuba Arte posted in social media as Acid fans build their epic water tower collection. That was directly from Jonathan and Drew, and you can check out anywhere where Drew, either a Drew Diplomat retailer or anywhere Drew Estate is sold for one of those amazing products. And if you guys are watching us tonight, of course, you are watching us on Facebook Live, and you can catch us on YouTube later as well on our channel. But we really appreciate those of you who choose to download us wherever you can listen to podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, doesn't matter, wherever you listen to podcasts. And you are listening to us exclusively because of Cornelius and Anthony Premium Cigars. Cornelius and Anthony Premium Cigars is steeped in tobacco tradition. For over 150 years, the Bailey family has been a part of America's tobacco heritage, passionately caring for the land they cultivate in Keysville, Virginia. Cornelius and Anthony's devotion to the finest grown tobacco and foremost aspects of craftsmanship allows them to introduce the most exquisite cigars to the market. They invite you to enjoy their portfolio of premium hand-rolled cigars and experience their dedication to producing an exceptional product. So, without further ado, thank you and welcome to another amazing take for tonight. We have an awesome show. I'm so excited to sit down with this gentleman. We already tried this once, and life, as it happens, gets in the way. But you know what? It didn't take third time's a charm. It took second time a charm to get Mr. Justin Andrews of Diesel Cigars and General Cigar Company to sit down with me. Justin, how you doing tonight?
Man, doing well. That was a hell of an intro there.
Man, I'm super excited to sit down and chat with you tonight, and it's been a while coming, and I really appreciate you coming on the show, man. I know it's been a long week for you, and to sit down on a late Sunday evening, it's even later for you on the East Coast. It really means a lot. So thank you so much for setting some time aside for me, and for our listeners and our viewers. It's gonna be awesome. So what you and I were talking about before the show, what we were lighting up. I of course told you I was really excited to light up the new sherry cask of the Diesel Whiskey Row Sherry Cask, which you guys have been highly touting since its release just before the trade show. But what are you lighting up tonight?
I'm actually, so like you, because I always like to talk about the newest cigar that I've released. So I too have a sherry cask. However, when I was digging through one of my my humidors, I ran across this original Whiskey Row 7x49 Churchill, which was my favorite size of the original line. And I swear to you, the thing just jumped out at me and was like, "You must smoke me tonight." And so I've got a few in store here, but I think I'm just going to, an oldie but a goodie. I say oldie, it's only been out for a year, but yeah, I couldn't turn it down. So yeah, so I'm smoking Whiskey Row Original Blend in the Churchill size.
Man, I think our good friend William Cooper actually is a big fan of that Vitola as well for that blend. And I actually got a hold of one on his recommend of it. And I really did. I had only smoked the smaller Vitolas for it. And I told you that they're actually aging. They're actually aging really well. They're really, really, because it's not a strong cigar to begin with. But it's really got some really nice complexity building with it while it ages. I'm a big aging nerd, so I knew I had to set some aside and everything. But the one I was telling you about before the show as well that I'm really excited about how it ages is the hair of the dog.
Oh yeah.
And you said you were excited about that as well, correct?
Oh yeah. I mean, with all of these projects that I work on, I always set aside a few from, the very first batch to, somewhere in the middle to I'm constantly smoking them, throughout the week. But yeah, it's always nice to kind of go back and revisit some of the first that came through the barrel aging process. I think the Churchill size was actually probably the only size of the original Whiskey Road that our boy William Cooper enjoyed. I used to give him, I always give him a hard time, but he did admit that he did enjoy the Churchill size a little bit more than some of the other Vitolas in the portfolio.
Well, everybody's a critic, right? So,
Yeah, right.
But again, Justin, really excited to welcome you in tonight. It's going to be fantastic. And so I wanted to kind of kick this show off a little bit with the bang. We talked a little bit about hair of the dog. Of course, Diesel Grind a couple years back was kind of the reintroduction to the market. We'll get back into Diesel as a brand as a whole. But the question I got to ask right off the bat is why whiskey barrels? Why bourbon barrel aging? Because this is something we were talking about a little bit. The bourbon barrel aging is something that's obviously a huge trend right now throughout tons of different industries. I've even seen it in cheese. You've seen it in wine. Beer, obviously, is a big one. And it usually dictates, obviously, because the extra care that kind of goes into it, it usually dictates not only just a higher price point, but a higher degree of notoriety, so to speak. And, I was talking to you about this before the show, and I was trying to word this very carefully because I truly intend not to be degrading in the way that this question is worded. But why the decision to take on the bourbon barrel age project with a brand like Diesel? Why not Cohiba? Why not La Gloria Cubana? Why not CAO? Why
Right.
Diesel?
Right. It's funny. I've been asked that very same question in multiple languages by multiple people, from sales reps to executives from Scandinavian Tobacco Group to executives from General Cigar, and last but not least, AJ Fernandez himself. So it's funny. I've probably had to answer that question more so internally than any other question. Now, you're probably the first media person that's actually asked me that question. So that is a very fair question, and I've gotten quite accustomed to answering it. So, couple things. Honestly, I've always been a bourbon guy. I've always enjoyed it. I enjoy wine. I enjoy, what some people call the finer things of life. But I'm just, I'm just a consumer. I'm a consumer of a bunch of different things, beer, wine, bourbon. And so, but from a cigar side, bourbon was never on my radar. Barrel aging was never something that I really had any inclination to do. However, through my relationship with Cave, the owner and creator of Rabbit Hole Bourbon, and when I discovered, the way that they toast their barrels before they do the Kentucky char, which is very common to people that understand bourbon process. The way these barrels come from Kelvin cooperage and things like that, just a light bulb went off, and I just had this idea, because when listening to Cave describe some of the extra steps that he takes in that process, and some things that differentiate his technique to other bourbon manufacturers, it reminded me so much of AJ and a lot of the things that AJ does with his fermentation and through his processes. that other companies don't do. And so the simple question was, or the simple answers, it literally was a light bulb moment. And I, it's been a great run ever since then. But yeah, so when I had that crazy idea, I worked with a few different people within our company, within STG, and the rest is history for now.
So, gosh, I mean, especially if anyone's ever had the great fortune to either live or be in this great state of Kentucky, I mean, it's hard not to find. There's great bourbon. You can throw a rock and hit great bourbon in about, every single direction.
Right.
But and Rabbit Hole is actually a distillery that I've really enjoyed. I actually, for my day job, I've actually had the privilege of going to Louisville every year for a conference. And so I've gotten to sample a lot of different bourbons over the last couple of years, which has been fantastic. And Rabbit Hole is one that's kind of stuck out to me. So I've had some exposure to it before the project was released and everything. Was it the personal relationship that you had there? Was it the product in general, combination of the two? What drew you to bringing in Rabbit Hole specifically into the fold?
Yeah, and the other thing too, I know that I didn't answer the back half of that first question as far as why the brand Diesel, which was honestly once I was able to take, it was well over a year to get everything set up and present this idea. The first thing my boss said was, "That'll be great for Cohiba," and so I immediately was like, "Well, here's another idea that that I'm not going to get to execute." But I will tell you this: the thing that really made me think that there was a fit, because Rabbit Hole is a higher end bourbon. It's a luxury bourbon, and we have brands in our portfolio that are positioned more as luxury brands. Cohiba, Partagas, even La Gloria for that matter. But the thing that really resonated with me and where I saw some synergies between both of our companies is Rabbit Hole is not this third generation bourbon making family with a distillery from the late 1800s and this legacy of 12 to 15-year-old bourbon. They're very upfront and straightforward in the fact that their bourbon is only 5 to 8 years old. It's on the packaging, and they have this almost this rebel mentality of, we're not like everyone else, and we're going to celebrate that fact, and we're not going to try to be something that we aren't. And those of us that enjoy bourbon know there's only so much 15 and 23-year-old bourbon out there on the market. So when I saw that, I really understood and appreciated it from the point of view, because look at Diesel. AJ's made every Diesel that we've ever made, so there is a legacy there. But people didn't know who AJ was prior to the last couple of years, and so people were smoking AJ Fernandez cigars before AJ Fernandez was a world-renowned name. Mm-hmm. So Diesel does, but outside of that, Diesel doesn't have this history that La Gloria Cubana or Partagas or Macanudo or even CAO for that matter. It's a young brand with young ideas. Nobody knows who the heck I am, and I'm kind of steering the ship here. So for me, selfishly, it kind of resonated because I'm like, here's this cool guy, this Armenian guy who's going down to Louisville, opening up a distillery right in the heart of Louisville, celebrating the fact that he only has 5 to 8 year old bourbon, and here I am leading this company with Diesel product that is changing direction, and we don't have the history that a lot of our counterparts do. So to me, that was a perfect match. To fast forward to your next question, knowing Kaveh the way that I do, and him having a close relationship with who I consider one of the most powerful guys in the cigar industry, a guy by the name of Alex Svensson, who's a consultant for us, the wheels just kind of started turning in motion, and things were together. At this point, Rabbit Hole's distillery was not open. MGP was making their recipe. So it was just one of those things that it was kind of a trial and error, and we didn't really know exactly how it would turn out. And fortunately for us and for my job stability, it kind of all worked out in our favor.
I mean, it really is a great project, and it is really, from my perspective, is really interesting because it was interesting how it kind of fell to this brand, and you've taken it and run with it. It's worked. It's been really well received, and they've obviously, you've obviously kept going with the projects and stuff. Now you're still doing like the hair of the dog. There's no bourbon barrel aging there, and there might be some other products that you guys either change up or redo. I'm still crossing my fingers for an unholy cocktail to come back. But there's it's not the full identity of what Diesel is. It's just a certain niche of it, and it's done really well. So that's really exciting for you guys.
That's correct. I've had to be very protective of that as well, because it was so successful that I didn't want Whiskey Row and barrel aging to become our sole identity. And for a lot of people now, especially in the brick and mortar community, they're just getting introduced to Diesel products. So I'm very aware of that and want to continue to launch tobacco forward products. Just because that's at the heart, that's who we are. So yeah, it's been a great run. Very happy. But Diesel is much more than just a bourbon barrel aged brand.
Like, I have to imagine that question came up, right, when you guys did Hair of the Dog release earlier this year before Sherry Cast. That was probably a question you got in some brick and mortars, like, oh, how long did you age this one, right? I mean, that probably came up.
Right. And people, I mean, people have even referred to Diesel as Whiskey Row. Like, here's Justin Andrews, the ambassador and global brand manager for Whiskey Row Cigars, and which is fine. But with anything that has a lot of success, I mean, it's the same thing with Steve Saka and these other guys. Like, very rarely do I hear a consumer say Dumbarton and Truss. It's so we all kind of.
It's Saka or one of the brands. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, there's a certain identity that goes with it, and if you're going to be known for something and it's going to be shed in a positive light, I mean, as long as they're not calling you a dog turd wrapped in tinfoil, I mean, it's all good, right?
And I've been called a dog turd and had my brands called dog turds before too. So I've been on both sides of the spectrum there.
Well, as I mentioned before, everyone's a critic. Now, the thing about that, I've been smoking Diesel cigars since they were, a catalog brand, and what a lot of people don't realize is they were very popular in that arena. But before I kind of go down the road of that, because we brought up some pretty cool points about Diesel, I do want to return to that subject, but I want to kind of segue for a second to something that I think is really interesting about you. And you were talking about your role and how nobody quote unquote knows you, but the thing that I really find interesting about your role in Diesel Cigars, or your role in general, and your role in this industry, is I find a very certain kinship with you, because I think both of us have this incredible passion for the game of baseball, and we both did not grow up in the cigar industry, but here we are. You far more successful than I. Want to point that out. But here we are, and our greatest, our favorite pastime and what we do day in and day out is try to educate, get people excited, and really share our passion for this industry and for cigars to as many people as we can. So tell me a little bit about that. What was it like how did you get from this kid that didn't grow up in the tobacco industry to where you are now, and leading this brand new charge, and just falling in love with premium tobacco?
Yeah, that's another question that I've gotten a lot over the years, and just even hearing you talk about the love and the passion for the brand, or for the industry rather. There's such a romance to what we do, and this. All of us make sacrifices, and there's challenges, and it is such a privilege to be a part of this very unique category. My background, exactly like you said, it was not around cigar tobacco, did not come from a cigar culture, did come from a tobacco culture. As I mentioned several times, my grandfather and his father before him, and his brothers, they were all tobacco farmers in Virginia and North Carolina. So cigarette tobacco, chewing tobacco. So I was exposed to that side of tobacco, and have fond memories of going to tobacco auctions with my grandfather, have fond memories of going out and picking sucker leaf and things like that. So, but never in my wildest dreams did I think about cigars, or think that I would end up in a career that was 100% focused on premium hand-rolled cigars. As you know, my life prior to this was all about baseball. And that was, as a young guy, as a young kid, that was kind of where I saw my future, and if not, maybe some sort of, business. But coming in, and a lot of it was almost trial by fire, with starting with Lou Rodriguez while still being in college, and having the success that we did so quickly. I mean, both of us just had to learn everything and consume as much information as possible, and doing things like going down to Nicaragua for sometimes 30 days at a time, and going down there more frequently than I would go to other places in the country. I was able to just be a sponge and absorb as much information as I could at a very early age, a very young age, and early on in my career. And I'm still learning to this day. But I will say it's this year marks my 10th year in the industry, which is just absurd to even think about. I mean, it's been a blink of an eye. But yeah, my path and everything has been pretty unique with the different people that I've gotten to work with, and some of the different brands that I've managed, and some of the cigars, and some of the great cigar makers that I've been able to work with.
Well, yeah, and I definitely want to touch on that but what the thing that's I want to hone in on for a second. I don't want to restir the whole debate about the difference between cigarettes and chewing tobacco and cigars. That's not what I'm here. But going back to your childhood and spending the time with your grandfather, and even spending time in those tobacco fields and everything. And you said that premium cigars was not even a blink of your eye. It wasn't even in the notion. Like, was that even something? Was premium tobacco or cigar something that even came up in the discussion or vocabulary as far as the way your family operated within the business, or was it just pure agricultural? Like, I'm really fascinated by this, because I think that people, the common denominator is such a terrible generalization, because there are so many different facets to tobacco, and the way it's grown and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, cigars were not even part of our vocabulary. It was more agriculture based. It was more of things that we talked about, trying to, and from my grandfather's side, he was more worried about having money to buy the equipment that he needed, and dealing with different climate, and within all the typical things that a tobacco farmer would face on that cigarette and chewing tobacco side, and cost and price increases, and things like that. Nobody in my family smoked cigars. Nobody in my family, like my immediate family, we didn't smoke cigarettes. We didn't chew tobacco, none of that. So it was, I mean, cigars were very, very foreign to me. And I think like the overwhelming majority of people that don't smoke cigars, they've seen it in a movie. They've seen pictures of Winston Churchill smoking cigars. Like,
of course,
my image of cigars were, the old guy with the handlebar mustache, drinking cognac and smoking a cigar. So yeah, the concept was foreign to me, and I had never smoked a cigar prior to working with Lou, and so yeah, I mean, it you couldn't have picked something that I knew less about to actually get involved with. So yeah, it's pretty crazy to look back at that and realize how little I knew about the premium cigars and the industry as a whole.
So you go from a really, at the time, a really up and coming boutique brand, but arguably one of the smaller brands out there, to now fast forward to your 10th year in the industry, and you're working for one of the largest. But in itself, I think you've got some familiarity with that boutique feel in your involvement with Diesel. Yes, but can you tell us a little bit about it's probably really difficult to nail it down to one, but maybe a couple of the major differences between boutique cigar company that you were really heavily involved with to now fast forward where you are with General right now.
Oh, sure. And the 6+ years that I was with Lou Rod, things that I've learned there, and understanding, what customers wanted out of boutique cigars, and competing with a lot of the cigars that I've managed now, or I've had input in, the finished product. I've taken all of that knowledge and applied it to what I do on a daily basis. And it's funny, we always referred to ourselves as a boutique cigar company, which we were. And I know there's arguments to, what
is and what isn't. Yeah.
But Jack Tarano politely reminded me that we were a micro boutique. Like we were, we were nowhere near the level of like an Espinosa or some of these other great brands. I mean, we were in about 350 accounts across the U.S. and we had some really banner years of sales. But as far as we were definitely a micro boutique. So it was a transition for me to go from that to where literally we were clawing and scratching and fighting for every little thing, and sometimes you'd spend hours with a retailer, not leaving until you got that 3-box order and celebrating that 3-box order. Now on the other side, as you can imagine, there's the positives far outweigh the negatives as far as when it comes to the options that I have of tobacco to play with, the people, the resources, the sales force. But for Diesel specifically, I do implement a lot of the things that I learned from running a boutique company into a lot of what I do with Diesel and how I want customers to relate to the brand and to feel connected to our cigars and our story. I mean, people probably get tired of hearing me say it, but Diesel's a lot of great things. But what I tell people, and within our company and outside our company, Diesel's biggest strength is it's unlike any other brand in the General Cigar portfolio. And fortunately for me, I've been given the flexibility and the trust to kind of manage this thing as I see fit and really take a different path than what we do with a lot of our other brands.
So if you could for a moment, Justin, again, I know it's probably difficult to always pick one thing, and I myself hate it when I get that question. So I myself also hate it when I give it. But so I always ask with that disclaimer, like I know it's difficult to pick one, but if you could or pick a couple, what's probably been the best thing about working for, in Jack Toronto's words, a micro boutique or a boutique cigar company, and what's the best thing about working for a company like General?
So the best thing with working with Lou Rodriguez is he would always have this thing. He was like, listen, I built the ship. You have to direct it. So right, wrong, or indifferent, maybe that's why it's no longer in existence. I got to run the business and I got to manage our sales brokers. And, I was doing everything from packing cigars and applying shipping labels to executing events to going down to his uncle's factory in Nicaragua. So the single biggest, most positive thing that I got from that experience is Lou gave me the freedom and the flexibility to learn. And a lot of times I made mistakes and I learned from those mistakes. And other times we had some successes. So I was very fortunate to experience every level of cigar making, from, like I said, from learning how to manage guys that were much older than I was and had much more experience in the industry, to executing events, to working on blends. So that was great. I mean, you really can't put a price tag on that type of education. Flipping over to General, the very best thing that we have is our people. I mean, having a company that has multiple factories and guys like Johnny Diaz, who's been in this industry forever, guys like Ernest, who goes and teaches other cultures how to grow cigar tobacco, to having a sales force the way that we do. I mean, it's just the scale is unbelievable, and the support. So yeah, it's coming from boutique where we had no support but ourselves, and we really couldn't rely on anyone but ourselves, to now having this great organization with all these great people. It's a total different ballgame.
It's interesting that you bring up the concept of being afforded the opportunity to make mistakes, because I think this is totally just absolute kismet, because I posted a Theodore Roosevelt quote on my Instagram page yesterday, with a picture of not smoking a Diesel, but I was smoking a cigar that I know you enjoy quite a bit, is the La Gloria Cubana, the new Spanish press.
Yeah.
But it's Teddy's quote was, in any moment of decision, the absolute best thing you can do is the right thing, which sounds obvious, of course.
Right.
But the next best thing you can do is the worst thing, or the wrong thing. Excuse me, the wrong thing. However, the absolute worst thing you can do is nothing. And that wrong thing that Teddy refers to are those mistakes that you made. And, they become so invaluable, whenever you're working on, whether it's, me working on this podcast or working on my day job or working at a retailer at Michael's, or you building a brand like Blue Rod and then shifting transition. It's the mistakes that you've made that you learn from that allow you to really be afforded the opportunities that you have today. So I think that mistakes and making those mistakes are probably even better than some of the victories. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And it's so cliche. I mean, you hear this stuff all the time. Like, you learn more from your failures than your success. But it is true. And ultimately nobody wants to fail. None of us want to fail. None of us want to make mistakes. It's against our nature. And especially as someone coming back, such as yourself, with a background in athletics, your goal is to win. Nobody shows up to come in second place. Nobody shows up to just embrace mediocrity. So it does, if you take pride in your work, and you put everything in yourself and your being into your work, when something doesn't turn out successful, it does hurt. But you can, my my philosophy, which again I think most people's philosophy is, do I sit around and do I sulk, and do I say poor me, and oh well, if so and so had only done this different, do I or do I accept responsibility for those mistakes, take a hard look at myself, and learn, and test, and trial some of these thoughts, and why did I think this way, and why did I do that? And fortunately for me, I've had a few more good days than bad days. So it's worked out. But yeah, it's kind of the old analogy. Do you love winning more, or do you hate losing? And me personally, I've always focused more on the things when I've had failures. It irked me, and bugged me to my core. Whereas when there's successes, there's almost a humility that comes with it, and you're like, because there's a lot of luck involved. So yes, I have learned a lot from a lot of the mistakes I made in
What's
my
the
personal.
what's the Billy Bean quote? It's I hate losing even more than I love winning.
And it's the truth. It's funny. Even like the teams that I follow now, with like in college sports or professional, like I hate watching them lose much more than I enjoy watching them winning.
It's stressful, man. It's stressful. Um, did I enjoy when my team won the World Series last year? Of course I did. But man, it was stressful the entire the entire way. It was this is why I kind of joke around every time I'm watching sports around friends or family and stuff, and they see me kind of stress out and everything, and I'm just like I just like just tell my I just kind of want to tell my sons don't like sports, man. It just
Oh yeah.
it
Oh,
just it just
oh.
just wrecks your heart.
It is so ridiculous when I get together with some of my old friends and stuff. It's like, oh my god, like we could have avoided so much heartache and pain if
Just
maybe we we had chosen a different hobby there.
gotten into something different a little bit. So the so kind of again, let's fast forward to current time now, or at least relatively present time. So you've worked with General, you've worked with some really amazing people along the way. We talked about Lou Rod. You've worked with Jack Tarani. We've mentioned him a couple times tonight. You worked with Michael Giannini when you first got to General, and now you have the ability. Now you have the opportunity to work with and collaborate with someone like AJ Fernandez. So I mean, that's about as dusted across the spectrum of people in the industry as you can get, for various different facets and reasons and everything. But that's quite a resume of partners that you've accumulated over time. And I know there's many more that we could spend all night listing and everything. But what are some of the things about working with different people that you've picked up and enjoyed?
Well, I owe a lot to Michael Giannini, because honestly, I don't think if it wasn't for him and our former president of General Cigar, Dan Carr, I don't think that I would. Oh, I know I wouldn't be a part of General Cigar today. So knew Michael for a few years. He's a legend in our industry, and someone that took the time to speak to me, this no-name guy from North Carolina that had a cigar company based in North Carolina. And fortunately for me, when my time ended with Lou Rodriguez Cigars, uh, Michael picked up the phone and gave me a call, and I'm here today because he took a chance on me, and to make that leap from this micro boutique to the largest cigar company, premium cigar company on the planet, is, I mean, that was a quantum leap there. And I tell people all the time, like, sales reps from other companies or from other industries will want to come and work for us, and we're not set up as a place that should be or will be your first job, or is your first, or your second job even. Like, we are in a position to really get the best of the best. And I'm not saying that I'm the best of the best at all, but I'm saying is Giannini had I can't imagine how many people he could have picked from to help him, come and run Foundry Tobacco Company. And so for him to take a chance on me, I owe a lot to him, and I learned a lot from him. And as and it's no secret to anybody, Michael's a polarizing figure, and I don't think there's another person walking this earth that is exactly like Michael's.
Yeah.
A lot.
Very, very, very unique personality indeed. I think the thing about Michael that I don't think anyone can argue. Cigars are subjective anyway, so you can argue whether or not you've liked the cigars in the past or whatever. And he has certainly been open about, and he's made some mistakes along the way as well. But one thing that I think that he never gets enough credit, I don't think he gets enough credit in general. But one thing he has an absolute eye for is talent. And I think, and you're a part of that, obviously. So I think that I don't think that anyone can truly dispute that about him. And he's got an exceptional eye for great people who will work really hard and who love this industry just as much as he does and these products. So to that point, really quick, you were talking the story about Giannini bringing you into General. I remember hearing a story about how you actually you were on your way. You had another job. And you were actually on your way to start that job, or you had just started that job. So, like, what made you put the break? And that was outside the industry. So this wasn't like another cigar company was recruiting you. This was completely outside the industry. So what was it about this opportunity that made you put the brakes on the other one and said, no, I got to go back and I got to give this another go. I got to do this again.
Yeah, it's I asked myself that same question. So yeah, Michael possessed a really unique ability to kind of navigate, a corporate structure while staying authentic and passionate into what he was doing. So I guess to go back, I had an interview with General Cigar over the phone with a guy that's no longer with our company. And I'm not sure exactly what happened. I just was under the impression that maybe the interview didn't go that well because I didn't hear anything back for 3 months, like nothing. And Michael would send me notes every once in a while, like, hey, we haven't filled the position. We got to work on a few things. So 3 months go by, and I did accept a really good job from a medical company. And that, I mean, the kind of job that a lot of people in the medical industry, work many years to get. And I was about 5 days from flying to California to do a 6-week training course to start with this job. And I get a call from the vice president of marketing at General Cigar, a guy that's no longer with us, and said, hey, we ran across your resume. We'd love to get you in here. And I said, Alan, this is it's too late. I mean, I've been, this was 3 months ago. And he's like, no, we really, can we get, so they flew me down there. I met, and I think I met with him and Michael at like 10 o'clock in the morning, and before lunchtime, I'd been offered a position. I told him I needed some time to think it over. And yeah, I guess ultimately, I wouldn't say it was a fear of the unknown at all. It was more of an assurance and a confidence in my ability within the cigar industry. So it's and it's something that I've relied on throughout my life in a lot of other areas. But like, I knew that I could provide value in this role. My other role in the medical field, although I knew that through the training and I was equipped, and I'd gone through like 8 interviews with this Fortune 500 company, and that was something that would have been a challenge. And in the long run, I mean, quite frankly, I probably would have made a lot more money. I mean, by a long shot. But again, coming from a boutique cigar company and looking up at General Cigar, like whatever industry you're in, that's the end result, is to work for the biggest company with the most resources. And I could turn it down. I mean, it was like getting a call to the big and saying, no, I'm gonna go, try to make it on the web.com tour in golf instead of playing baseball, So it was a pretty easy choice once I really sat down and thought about where I wanted to be. And to be fair, if this hadn't worked out, the other job would have still been there. I mean, we all know how large, pharmaceuticals and
Right.
certain equipment is. So I didn't have a fear of that I couldn't get back into that field. But looking back, I'm glad I made the choice that I did.
Did you liken the opportunity to that? You used the metaphor just in I don't know if it was in passing, but at the time, if you can go back to that moment, did you sit there and think of this is my big league moment? This is my opportunity. This is my call up. Did you liken it to that kind of comparison?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because when I sold my part of the business back to Lou, from rumors of me taking over other brands to being offered national sales positions to companies actually trying to work with me, and I was even in the process of developing my own brand, but nothing quite worked out, and everything there was always some holes in a few things. So, which is why I basically said, listen, it's time for me to get out of this industry. Like, I had a good run, but I've got a tremendous opportunity in other organizations and other industries. So when General did reach out to me, it was something that we used to joke around, joke a lot about, like, hey, even if this doesn't work out, you'll be able to go work for another company. And so getting that call was like, wow, this is actually could become a reality.
Absolutely. So again, to stay in the context of present day and everything, so you've been working. So you come on board with Giannini. You've been working for General for now. This is your 6th year, but you've been working as the brand ambassador for Diesel for a couple of years. When you were first approached, so what was the decision as far as Diesel Cigars? Did you pick Diesel, or were you asked to take on the project of Diesel?
I was asked to take on the project. So when first starting with General, I didn't have a title. I didn't have anything. It was just the Michael's tobacco guy. That was it. Like, I mean, they didn't know what to do with me. A lot of the guys that I was working with, I possessed a different skill set than they did. And again, most of them hadn't even heard of my company. So I started off as Michael's tobacco guy. Then I became a brand manager, and then a senior brand manager, and managed Foundry Tobacco Company and everything that came along with that. Fast forward, Diesel is a powerhouse brand that very few people in our kind of circle knew about, because again, it was a direct to consumer brand.
Right? Yeah,
right?
if you're a brick and mortar guy or gal, Diesel's not something on your radar, right, at the time.
Right, and it's not something that, again, there was no brand manager of Diesel, there was no face of Diesel, so it wasn't something that Coop or you or guys were doing reviews about, Unholy Cocktail or Wicked or Rage, but it was this behemoth of a brand because we had this amazing, large number of people that smoked Diesel. So it was a great opportunity. But yeah, my company came to me, specifically the president of our company, Regis Brosna, and he came to me and said, listen, we want to take this brand to the next level. And it's a boutique type brand. It's a challenging brand, and we want you to take it over. I got to tell you, at first I was like, oh man, like, I just gotten done with Foundry, which had a unique set of challenges, and now I've got to deal with this brand that like retailers don't support. That so I wasn't excited about it, but just digesting that information. But as I dug into the brand and I met with the team at Cigars International, and I met with our consultant Alex Simpson, and I really understood the bandwidth of this brand and the products, and the fact that AJ Fernandez is making the cigars, I became more excited, and as I became more aware of what this brand can be. So yeah, I was, and honestly, I don't even know if I was asked to take it over. More so, I was told that I had to. So,
I was avoiding using those words, Justin. So I didn't know. When you work for a company, sometimes when you're asked, it's more a directive.
I don't think I had much choice in the matter, to be honest with you.
So you talk about the unique challenges of taking over Diesel now, and you said it's a monster powerhouse brand. And again, it was a brand that I smoked quite a bit of when I first started smoking. And like I said, if you want to do something with Unholy Cocktail, I will not be disappointed. Just putting it out there.
Oh, we will for sure.
But the question I have, I mean, and you may not even know this answer, Justin, is why, after all this time, because it is a success. Diesel was a success. It is a success in that arena. Why uproot it from its roots and try to push it into an arena that it's not comfortable with, knowing that retailers are automatically going to push back on you because, look, man, we don't carry online stuff, man. I mean, because that's
right. Yeah, obviously this decision was made well above my pay grade to do it, and a lot of it was integrating our business with Cigars International, and well, maybe business isn't the right word. It was creating more of a relationship with both of our companies and collaborating. And so again, the guys at CI are phenomenal at what they do. And I would like to think that us at General Cigar, we're phenomenal at what we do, managing brands and growing brands. So to me, it makes sense from a higher level to go, let's put these assets together and see what kind of magic can come out of the CI brain trust and the General Cigar brain trust. And Diesel was the easiest option because of the brand's success. And a lot of times people get price points confused, like, oh, it was, it's an inexpensive cigar, so how can it be great? But what people fail to realize is anytime you sell something direct to a consumer, you're cutting out that middleman markup. So again, Diesel's always used premium tobacco from AJ Fernandez and from General Cigar. It was just able to be sold at a lower price point because, again, it wasn't going to retail. It wasn't getting, keystone margins and things like that. So I stand behind all of the Diesel portfolio, and I'm proud to do so. But I think from a top-down perspective, they saw the potential in the brand ultimately to say, hey, this is something that retailers have customers smoking it and buying it. Why not give them the ability to sell it finally? And again, the whole thing was we kept using is we wanted to elevate the brand. And we've been able to do so.
Yeah, I can honestly tell you from the retail perspective, when Grind first was introduced, it was an easy sell because there was familiarity. It wasn't this brand new brand out of the woodwork, completely made up from nothing. It had, as you mentioned, it had that notoriety. It was just a different arena.
Right.
When you're selling it to a consumer, you're like, oh, this is Diesel. Like, oh, I know. Yeah, I know Diesel. Like, and then of course you get the follow-up questions like, aren't they online only? Well, actually now, blah, blah, and then you get to tell the story about it. But you've already got one foot in the door. So I with the consumer, it was probably not as big of a battle as it was obviously with the retailer being with that automatic pushback and everything. But I gotta say, and this isn't just for your benefit, Justin, and this isn't just because you're on my show, but I gotta say, I think, and I know it's only been a couple of years, but I gotta say, you guys have won. I gotta say, you guys have won the retail over. At least it feels like that. I mean, would you agree? I mean, is that?
I would agree. I think the long-term, success of the brand, that story's still, untold, because again, it's only been a few years. But to your specific statement, we have won over the hearts and minds of retailers because simply of the amount of retailers that we're in. I mean, Diesel has a distribution that's equal to a lot of our top tier brands, which is how we determine future success. If we can get into X amount of retail accounts across the country, that typically creates a pipeline for success for us. Not necessarily that every cigar that I make or every launch that I release is going to be a success, but we at least have the distribution to where it's going to have a really good shot. And a lot of the brands that are constantly fighting are brands that don't necessarily have the distribution. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised at the amount of retailers that came to me and said, "Oh, thank you. I have more people that ask for Diesel than any other cigar, and I don't have it, and now I have the ability." And I'm telling you, that retailer far outweighs the guy that's like, "Nope, don't want to deal with it. It's a CI brand. I don't care what you say. You
Right.
know, blah blah blah." It has been well received. And the other thing too, and I'm no salesperson because thankfully for our company we've got great sales reps, but I've been traveling with those guys and girls when they've brought up, on their iPad, and they've said, retailer X, you've got 5,000 people in your greater regional area that have bought Diesel online over the past certain number of years. So why not? They're going to buy it. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not give you the ability to, one, know that it's a contract brand, so it's price protected, and know that we're going to do everything we can to support you, the retailer. And those guys, it's been a very easy sell from that standpoint.
Yeah, I know. And one of my very good friends who comes up frequently to the shop and visits with me, and I know he's actually watching tonight as well. Him and I used to smoke Diesel all the time. And so when I showed him Grind when it first came back out, I mean, he was so excited, and it was really great because he was like, "Man, they need to bring back Hair of the Dog," and sure enough, this year I got to show him that. So that was something so exciting. In fact, you even when you first posted, you're like, "Coming soon." I think you posted like, I tagged him on that. I was like, I didn't even say any words. I just tagged him on your post, and he got giddy as a school child, man. He was so excited. So, again, back to that point of, this is a brand that's been around for a long time, and it has those buyers, it has those consumers locked in on it, and so it's kind of breed success. Just this last question on Diesel, and then we'll go into our curveball segment here, Justin. So, okay, again, this is obviously not your first year, but what I really liked about General's booth is always busy at the IPCPR trade show, now PCA. Got to put that disclaimer now with the name change.
I've finally been able to pronounce IPCPR correctly, and they changed it. So
Yeah, it took 10 years, right? Yeah, it took me about the same amount of time to finally put the letters in the right order. But so the General's booth is always busy and everything. But what does it feel like from your perspective? What you've been able to do with the brand and everything, and you're sitting there in the booth during showtime, and you look to your left, and you got Sean Williams over with Cohiba. You got to look across the way, and you see Macanudo, which has been a top 5 cigar in the world for 20 plus years. You look to your right, Partagas, Rick Rodriguez with CAO. I mean, these are industry standard, long-lasting lineage brands. And like I said, we just talked about Diesel's strength and how long they've been around as well. But there is a distinct difference between what Diesel is compared to when you mention those other brands. How does it feel to, in a lot of ways, not just share the spotlight, but in some ways, and with all respect to those other folks, outshine them in some cases? How does that feel?
Man, it's funny. I kind of got chill bumps with you talking about that. So in the grand scheme of things from our company, Diesel is a very small brand in comparison to those other brands that you mentioned. If you look at just the overall portfolio options and the dollars, like it was one of the things that shocked the crap out of me when I went to General, is because I didn't smoke Partagas, I didn't really smoke Punch, and to see like the numbers of these brands, it's like, oh my god, like it was absolutely just mind boggling. On the other end, we did focus on Diesel a lot, and so to have a booth space and to have the ability to promote the brand the way I wanted it, and to get, have a budget to where I can go out and do things like build and design bars and whiskey barrel lighters and ashtrays, and see the response is, I mean, it's just shocking. And then from an overall success standpoint, where you said sometimes outshine, from a brand portfolio, no, but from a specific launch, we've been able to achieve stuff that nobody in our organization, myself included, thought were possible. So without getting into specifics, when I launched Whiskey Row last year, and we started selling it in June, from June to December, that was the #1 selling cigar that launched that year for General Cigar.
Oh, wow.
It outsold every other IPCPR item. It outsold every single cigar that launched in that time frame from June to December. Now, we, Macanudo launched Inspirato Red in March of that year, and it outsold Whiskey Row. But from that timeline, from the show to the end of the year, and I mean, it just blew all of our minds. Now, from my company's perspective, one success doesn't build a brand.
Of
So
course.
there's a lot more to go, but just in answering your question, like all of us were pleasantly surprised. Now, Rick reminds me all the time, and Sean Williams, like, hey, don't get too cocky because you got a long ways to go. But yeah, the success of Whiskey Row was just, I mean, it was far beyond anything that I had forecasted for or anticipated. And so when we have, our national sales meetings and we're recapping stuff from the year before, to see Whiskey Row mentioned and Diesel mentioned with brands like Cohiba, Partagas, Macanudo, CAO, it's really, really a cool thing to see.
I think that's the one. I think that's one of a lot of things, but I think that one thing that I don't think gets enough credit. It gets credit because you guys are, as brand ambassadors. We mentioned Sean and Rick and some other folks. Ed, I think, is one of the most underrated guys in your company too. He does a great job.
Absolutely.
But I think that's something that General does absolutely incredibly well, is putting these people in place to represent these brands, not just as a stand-in. Like, you guys have taken on an identity with it. You have truly embraced those, like every single one of you, and every single one is a different personality, a different person, unique in a lot of different aspects. But you've been able to really capture, you, and by you I mean General's been able to really capture a really unique experience by having folks like yourself represent the brands that they do.
Well, it was definitely an initiative, and the credit goes to our president, Regis, because prior to, I don't know, a few years ago, all we had was Rick Rodriguez, and Rick, he sets the standard, and he's someone that I look up to and admire, and would hope to have a fraction of the success and the impact on our category like he has. But prior to that, there was no Sean Williams. There was no Jack Tarano for the time we had. So Regis was smart enough to see, like, hey, we need people, we need personalities with these brands, and not just ambassadors, but people that are involved in the direction of the brand. And when you mention like a guy like Ed Lehman is a guy that possesses both the analytical ability to be a senior brand manager for, he used to work for Altria, he's worked for major companies, but he's also, end of the day, he's a cigar guy. And if smoking cigars was the only prerequisite to running a brand, everybody who smoked a cigar could have a brand. So you have to have, in my opinion, and not to speak for General Cigar, but I think it's pretty clear that we've aligned ourselves and we now employ people that at the end of the day, they are consumers of our product. Like, we smoke cigars, we talk about cigars, we watch, podcasts, and we're involved in the cigar community, while also possessing the ability to know what it's like to lead and manage a brand for a company that's publicly traded and that has a board of directors and shareholders.
Just to give another nod to Ed Lehman does a fantastic job, as we mentioned. That I think what's really unique about him specifically is and the brands that he's associated with, is he has such a comfort factor with them that it's like he has been there from the beginning. And these brands are hundreds of years old, and it's the way he's been able to really get comfortable with that has just been, it's been really great. It's been great for General. It's been great for those brands, and he does a phenomenal job as well. So I'd like to give him a special.
Oh, yeah. And Ed's my guy. I give him a hard time because he claims to have been with our company for something like 13 years, but I politely remind him that for about 5 years he left or maybe it was 3 or 4, he left our company. So he's only been back for about 2.5, 3 years. So I remind him of that technically to me, it's like a breakup. You can't break up for 3 years and then come back and date and say, oh yeah, we've been together for 8 years. It doesn't work that way. But he's great. And it's funny because, you hear the term master blender and cigar designer and all this stuff. Ed has a really good. He's like, I'm a cigar whisperer. He was like, I go to our factory and I work with our great tobacco, and I just kind of whisper. I just kind of say, hey, what if we did this, or what if we did that? And if you look at the brands that he's managed, I mean, over the years, he launched Partagas 1845. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Partagas Yellow Box. He's worked on Coquipa. He's worked on La Gloria. He's worked on CL. And now with managing Punch, I mean, Punch is discussed more, and there's more cool things happening with Punch now than in any time that I can remember. And even this year with launching El Torcedor under Hoyo. So you can see the guys that really take pride in what they do. And this, and as you know, this isn't a 9-to-5 job. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't, I'm just punching the clock. And like, if you're not invested,
Absolutely. It's 10:30 my time, 11:30 your time. So definitely not 9 to 5.
that's right. So no, Ed deserves all the accolades that he gets. He is truly one of the best. And if you look at the brands that he manages and the amount of dollars that he manages, he is, I mean, you can take tens and I mean, dozens of companies, put them together, and he manages more and has more of a market share in our industry than a lot of people. And I'm not saying that from like an arrogant standpoint, but the responsibility that he has within our company and the brands that he manages is something that he doesn't take lightly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. Absolutely. So Justin, really appreciate you coming on board tonight. Been a fantastic time. Before I let you go, I do have to go into our curveball segment. So my last question to you, you know, we actually haven't really talked too much about your relationship and partnership with AJ. I think that's been discussed quite a bit on other shows. And so I wanted to kind of take a different approach on this show. Because there are questions that I find interesting that I really want to have answers to. And so, you know, I asked you this question before we start. So it's really, I always tell you, it's not really a curveball to people. It's more like a softball, but it's something for just a different change of pace and everything. You know, you've had, again, as I mentioned before, you've had the opportunity to work with a lot of different people. We mentioned Ed just a moment ago, who's been a part of it, but Michael Giannini, bring you in on to General, Lou Rodriguez, Jack Tarano, and now AJ Fernandez. So you've worked with a wide variety of personalities, brand managers, brand ambassadors, master blenders, a lot of people that have a lot of strong passion for tobacco and everything. So this is not Justin Andrews, employee of General Cigar. This is not Justin Andrews, brand ambassador for Diesel. This is Justin Andrews being asked by his, hopefully, friend, Bear Duplessis. We'll find out at the end of the show. We'll see. We'll see. But if Justin Andrews could collaborate with anyone, past or present, living or dead, on a cigar, who would it be?
Ooh, that is a good question. So I don't know that it's one person in particular, because I am a fan of a lot of people and I smoke a lot of different cigars on a daily basis. But I can tell you, I'm a really, really big fan of what Eric Espinosa, what him and Hector and Jack are doing. I would love to get the opportunity to work with Eric because being a Nicaraguan based company, I travel to all of our factories, but I spend the majority of my time in Nicaragua. So I'm definitely biased to Nicaraguan companies. Eric Espinosa is someone that I have a lot of respect for. Same thing with Skip Martin, him and Mike Rosales. I really admire what they're doing over at Roma Craft. With some of the larger guys, like I've had a relationship with Jonathan Drew for many years now, and I'm a big fan of what he's done and what he continues to do with Drew Estate. And even with other factories like Hoya de Nicaragua, I'm a big fan of what they do. Ernesto Perez Correa has been somewhat of a mentor of mine. So all these guys, I know that's not probably the answer you were looking for, one specific person, but I can tell you those are the companies that I really admire. And again, from my boutique background, I can't get out of it. I mean, even when you look at guys like Kyle at Wart or Andre at Viaje, like I'm a big admirer of what these guys do, and I could see a time in the maybe not too distant future to where there might be some things that kind of catch you by surprise. So those are the guys that I would love to get together and kind of collaborate and see what we can come up with.
See, I didn't know what you were going to say, Justin. But I mean, all those people are just absolutely incredible folks, and there's so many people. I mean, I think you bring up a good point. There's so many people in this industry doing amazing things. Eric Espinosa, obviously one of my favorites. The Espinosa Habano was my 2017 cigar of the year, so I'm definitely a big fan of what they do at La Zona. But what I was secretly hoping that you would do, and I know it's a little on the nose, and I know it's a little cliche, but as the brand ambassador for Diesel, I was thinking, that maybe you would want to collaborate with one Shaquille O'Neal.
That's funny.
A little.
We've discussed that. Yeah, there's a couple things. There's there's Shaq Diesel, and then there's you've got the show Diesel Brothers. So there's a couple different things. There's even, from what I've heard, there's like a porn star out there named Diesel, which probably is not the direction that I would go, but it is Shaq. Shaq is a cigar guy, and obviously he's Diesel. So yeah, I'm still kind of on the fence of how celebrity cigars actually work in our nation.
Right.
But yeah, that was definitely a fair push there on your part.
Well, I mean, the spotting of celebrities at the last few trade shows has been pretty big. Ed Reed's been a staple at the last couple. He's in football, but basketball's been making a push. Karl Malone being at the last two IPCPR trade shows, and then of course this year with Ace Prime, Tiago Splitter and Dominique Wilkins. So I mean, the door's open if Shaq wants to take it.
That's right. I told Dominique, I said, man, I wish I could have snagged you up because he's a North Carolina boy. He actually grew up in a little town called Washington, North Carolina, which is about, 20 miles from where I'm at right now. And so yeah, there's definitely some opportunities there. And it's funny, when you start mentioning people, like you always forget somebody. And one of the guys that I really admire what he's doing is Rafa Nadal, with Altadis. Like, he's someone that I enjoy, our conversations and kind of his view on cigars. So, again, Diesel's my baby, and it's a big focus. But I'm fortunate enough through General Cigar to be able to have my hands in a couple different things. So yeah, just stay tuned. You'll see some you'll see some stuff coming out that I think is exciting, and finally people will, because I keep saying Diesel's not the only thing that I do. So hopefully at some point, they'll be able to look back and go, yeah, Justin did a little more than just push Diesel on everybody.
Absolutely. Well, I am wrapping up this sherry cask, whiskey row sherry cask from Diesel, and I smoked one at the show that you gave me, and I immediately brought some. You gave me a few, and I brought some home, and I immediately put them in the humidor. And I was looking forward to tonight where I could bust one out after a few days rest, after a few weeks rest in the humidor.
Let me ask you a question.
Go for it.
So it's funny because I ask everybody this, and the answers are always crazy. Which do you prefer, the original or the sherry cask?
If you had asked me after I had smoked it the first time, I would have still told you the original. And I think, to be honest, I think I might still lean towards it, particularly now with my discovering of the Churchill Vitola in the original. But I gotta say that I think the ceiling is a lot higher on this cigar. I mentioned how the original Whiskey Row is aging really well. I think this cigar has a really strong potential to age incredibly well, because this has just been a few weeks, and I think the improvement has been vast. It's really I try not to judge a cigar at the trade show just because of the environment that we're in. But there's still some cigars that you get excited about when you smoke and everything. And this was something, but even when I smoked it then, I was like, this is gonna keep getting better. And as I'm smoking it now, it has, and I know that it's gonna keep getting better. So I think the ceiling is higher on sherry cask than the original. But if you're asking me, I think I'm still leaning a little bit towards the original. But it's very good.
And that's fair. And it's funny, people are so split. And my goal with launching this was not like, I didn't think that we could make something that was better than the original, but I just wanted it to be different. Simply different blend, different flavor profile, different smoking experience, because we all face that challenge of what's new, what's next, and you don't want to forget about how good the original was. So I think I accomplished that in making it different. But it's funny because, like Jack Tarano loves the sherry cask. He loves the original too, but Eric Espinosa, he only likes the original. And then Rocky, for example, Rocky was like, oh, the original is way better than this, but Nish was like, no, the sherry cask is better, and so on and so forth. So it's been interesting for me to see, get people's opinions on which version they like the best.
Well, like I said, I am excited about to see where the cigar goes, and I think I'm right on it. That I think the ceiling is higher on it, but I am enjoying it nonetheless. And so, if you guys are out there watching, listening, check out your retailer for Diesel Whiskey Row and Diesel Whiskey Row Sherry Cask, as well as other Diesel projects. You might be able to snag a couple hair of the dog. They might still be out there, but they are a limited. It's a one and done, right, Justin? I've heard that.
That's correct.
Yeah. So snag those if you can find them, because they are one and done. Truly a limited cigar. Not the limited cigars that are out there that somehow pop up all the time. But Justin, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful evening. Very, very, very much enjoyed this. This was fantastic. For all of you guys out there that tuned in live, we really appreciate your likes, shares, your comments. Don't forget, go to ELOSOFUMAR's Facebook page. Check out our guest list that's upcoming. We're gonna have some amazing guests, just like tonight with Justin. It's been fantastic. It's gonna be even better the next few weeks. We've got some great folks lined up. I'm just so proud, so privileged to be talking to great folks like Justin. It's just been awesome. So check out our Facebook page. And if you listen to our podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, you're listening to us exclusively because of Cornelius and Anthony Premium Cigars. And don't forget to download and leave a review, because that's actually a really good thing. And if you really want to get really clever, if you actually unsubscribe and then resubscribe, it actually really helps the numbers. But don't forget to resubscribe, because that's really important. So again, for everyone out there, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Justin Andrews of General Cigar Company, brand ambassador for Diesel Cigars. It's been a fantastic evening. Thank you so much again, Justin. We thank you, thank you, thank you. And for everyone out there, we appreciate you and everything that you guys do. For everyone out there, I'm Bear Duplessis. This was our 84th take on ELOSOFUMAR Takes. We'll see you next week. We've got a great guest for you lined up, so check out our Facebook page, like it, and check out who's coming up next. And as always, everyone, guess what? We'll see you next time.